Dr. Mark Changizi here, your Science Moment. Today I'm going to talk about what it means to be a leader, and specifically a leader on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, and things like this. What does it mean to be a leader? Because recently I've been going after many of the lockdowners, the maskers, the people that push these interventions, and instead of going after the folks that are still justifying and saying that we should have done that, and it's good that we did that, and it's good that we violated civil liberties for this disproportionately dangerous virus. No, now more recently I've been trying to go after the folks that are now claiming to be on Team Reality, but back in March and April and potentially beyond of 2020, they were pushing lockdowns. They were saying we need to do these civil liberties violations because of the disproportionate danger. And then they suddenly switched at some point between then and now. And what's frustrating about this is that now these folks are claiming to be part of Team Reality. And that's great to have them on our side. And a lot of folks are like, well, that's great that they switched over and now they're on our side. And things were a little bit confusing back then. So just they made a mistake. But now they're on our side and they're fighting this problem. What that misses is that they were the problem. The problem was that the commentator class, the public policy class, the journalist class incited hysteria. They incited mass hysteria with their irresponsible behavior, right? They're the ones who caused it. It's not good enough to say, well, I'm glad they're on our side now. It'd be like the person who says, look, I may have been arguing that we should burn Judy, the witch, back then, but later I realized that was a bad idea, and I'm totally against having burned Judy, the witch, right? What matters is what you did when the mob and the riots occurred. What did you do just prior to that and during that? If you were part of the riots and the mob and the mass hysteria, you are culpable, right? As we've talked about in earlier Science Moment videos, you are culpable. The problem here was not mustachioed puppeteers outside that did this. It was those among us, right? It was their panicked reaction and, saying all of these interventions, which were mostly explicitly recommended against, have to be done, right? Civil liberty suddenly didn't matter, and those people are now claiming to be on our side. They were the problem. It's not nice to have them on our side because now they're fighting the people that did this. No, they were the problem. They were all parts of the problem, right? What you learned was that you couldn't trust, you couldn't count on those supposed commentators, those supposed public intellectuals. Failed in the only time in their generation where it really mattered, they failed, right? Now, and furthermore, if they say, look, things were fuzzy back then, we've got to give them a break. No, if things were fuzzy and things were unclear, then it definitely wasn't justified to violate civil liberties en masse for these interventions if things were fuzzy. How did that possibly justify it? And then furthermore, civil liberties don't go out the window just because things are fuzzy or panicked and so on, right? If they had been really anything more than faux intellectuals, they would not have incited further panic as they did, right? People I'm talking about are people like Michael Schellenberger, for example, that I focused on, Matt Walsh. Supposedly, look, you can go check my Substack where I talk about these. These people were all part of the, Ian Miles Gray, these people were all part of the panic in March, April, May, and potentially beyond in 2020. So what I wanted to focus on now is not so much documented because beyond those three, there are dozens and dozens of others, which that's great. If they want to say, look, I'm sorry, I really got caught up and that was wrong, but their reputations need to be hit. The reason free expression works when there's free markets of ideas is because every time you speak and you make claims, you bet reputation. You put reputation on the line. You put it at stake. They failed, right? You can't let them suddenly be leaders of Team Reality now and say, oh, well, I didn't know that. No, you failed. Your reputation needs to take a huge hit on the basis of all of those claims. And now you can do great stuff and maybe say, look, really made a mistake. We've got to make sure these things never happen again. Whatever. Your reputation can rise. But it can't simply be the case that you ignore the fact that they were the problem and then let them supposedly lead Team Reality now, right? Folks like me and thousands of others, hundreds and thousands of others who are on Team Reality since the beginning have been censored since then, either permanently suspended or systematically censored on all social media. right? Because of the incitement of these supposed leaders today. But really what I wanted to get at, I got sidetracked. What I wanted to get is, what does it mean when I keep saying some of these folks are our leaders? And some people on social media say, Mark, these aren't I didn't elect these people as leaders. What does it mean even to be a leader in something like Twitter, on social media? Remember, social media and social networks are decentralized networks. And this is the kind of things that we talk about, Dr. Tim Barber and I talking about in our newest book, Expressly Human. It's about the origins of emotional expressions and how it is that social animals of all kinds communicate as a social group so that it works, so that it functions, so that we can usually avoid having to fight about every last thing. Right? The reason that social networks work is that when we make claims, we're betting reputation, putting it at stake, and if it turns out that I'm right, I gain in reputation, and you, the person I was arguing with, might fall in reputation. And this happens a gazillion times all over the network, right? Now, if I gain enough reputation, over time, more and more people listen to what I have to say because I've been shown to be right over time. I potentially have more followers in a natural, organic social network, and I've got all of this cred, all of this reputation. So if I often just say something, because I've got so much, I can bet a whole lot of chips. I can say, no, this is right, and I'm really super, super confident. People might just back down and say, okay, I believe him, right? Because they don't want to have to argue back and have to bet all that. They don't have enough social capital to potentially even argue back. What makes a leader happens in a decentralized fashion. The people with higher reputations that bubble up over time, they end up with more people listening to them, and they're more believed because they're able to bet large amounts of social capital that others don't even want to compete with. It happens organically in a decentralized way, and it happens emergently. Nobody elects these leaders. It happens in a decentralized way from the evolution of the network itself. So when I say that some of these team reality leaders now were in fact lockdowners and panicked lockdowners back in March and April of 2020, but they're leaders today, and they're not, no, they are leaders. They have ended up with reputations that for somehow, some way, did not get hit. People are always surprised. These people were actually pro-lockdown? I had no idea. The networks aren't working as they should. One, because the anti-lockdowners were systematically censored and unable to get their message out. And two, these networks are large and don't function the way, even when their free expression gets up and running. There are inherent problems in Twitter, for example, today, in just its sheer size and scale, at letting these messages possibly properly move and move through the system and let people be reminded, here's what this person said back then, and that ought to devastate, at least for a while, their reputation, right? Leaders in any kind of community are usually, almost entirely, they bubble up emergently by virtue of the decentralized network. They're not elected, there's no formal process by which it happens. It happens all on its own through the gazillion interactions of lots of individuals. And suddenly you'll say, I don't know where this dude or this lady came from. People are often, where did this person come from? Out of the blue. They suddenly have all of this sway. They've acquired all of the social capital, and social capital is how you move minds in social network. Suddenly they have the power to move minds. That's what it is to be a leader, right? So there's two general lessons. One is, that's what it is to be a leader. It happens emergently, and almost all leaders in all communities are ultimately about having that emergent status, not in fact elections. You can be elected all day long, but if no one really appreciates you, thinks of you as high reputation, you won't have the power to sway minds, right? And the other is that a lot of the supposed team reality leaders today, well, they are ending up to be leaders in this decentralized sense when they shouldn't be. And we need to hold their feet to the fire. And then they say, look, I really messed up. I was part of the problem. They need to realize that they were part of the problem. And then whether you want to, fully forgive them or not, but they have to take that reputation hit. And over time, they can easily rise up by virtue of the good things they do to ensure, for example, that that doesn't happen again. And that was your science moment. These are the things that we talk about at FreeX, freex.group, and the things that Dr. Tim Barber and I talk about in our groundbreaking new book, Expressly Human.